We have another great show for you this week. Joining us from the world of professional wrestling is Evan Ginzburg. And Evan is going to be telling us all about his new documentary, 350 Days, where they detail the lives of professional wrestlers and how they're on their road for more than 350 days a year. Also joining us from the world of nightclubs and entertainment and burlesque is Jeff WACHMAN. We're excited about having both those guests on our show today, and we want you to tune in and enjoy. The Dreamhouse Nation loves it when we give out our email address, and that is dreamhousenation@gmail.com. That's dreamhousenation@gmail.com. Right in to win tickets. We are giving away some of the best tickets of the summer. We're giving away tickets to the Sonic Temple in Columbus, Ohio, May 25th through May 28th. Tool, Godsmack, Avenged Sevenfold, Queens of the Stone Age, Kiss, Rob Zombie, Foo Fighters, the Deftones. It is going to be an amazing event. Right into dreamhousenation@gmail.com to be eligible to win tickets to this huge event. So definitely don't miss out. Sonic Temple, May 25th through the 28th, Columbus, Ohio, historic Crew Stadium. Right in. Enjoy. Joining us today is Evan Ginzburg. He is talking all about 350 Days on the Road. It's a great documentary about professional wrestling, and he is also going to tell us a little bit of insight about the movie The Wrestler. Thank you for joining us, Evan.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So what is 350 Days?
350 Days refers to some of the wrestlers, the biggest stars in the business back in the 80s, wrestled literally 350 days a year. They didn't see their families. The marriages dissolved. It was sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's a documentary chronicling that absolutely insane, brutal lifestyle that unfortunately has left a several mile long trail of dead before their time wrestlers. It's a tough business. And in the movie, Bret, Hart, superstar Billy Graham, Ted DiBiase, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana. I don't want to bore you, but there's like 36 legends in this movie telling about what it was like to be on the road 300 plus days a year. The name of the film was 350 Days. So, for example, Greg Valentine told me he was on the road about 320 days a year during those peak 80s Hulkamania era days. And Bret Hart said he was on the road 330 days a year. So it's not an exaggeration. And some of the NWA champions literally were out there, 6-7 days a week, and it just were never home. Crazy lifestyle.
Definitely. I was going to say, I kind of equate it to the rock and roll lifestyle. I mean, it seems there's a lot of parallels between professional wrestling and being a rock star.
Oh yeah. Instead of groupies, the wrestlers refer to the women, unfortunately, as ring rats. And there's that aspect of it. The woman in every town kind of lifestyle, and the after parties, and the readily available cocaine and everything else, painkillers, and whatever kept these guys going. And basically, in the course of 24 hours, they're in one city one day, another city the other day, and partying in between, and just, sex, drugs, rock and roll, not much different than a rock star. But the real difference would be if a Mick Jagger or an Elton John or somebody from that era were headlining a major arena like Madison Square Garden, they got paid a hell of a lot better than the wrestlers. That's the real difference.
Exactly. And they didn't get put through a table. They didn't get hit by a chair. They didn't get bleed themselves. None of that extra stuff that the wrestler had to go through.
Yeah, what's interesting is there's a positive side to it. They saw the world on the promoter's dime, as Lanny Poffo always said. Lanny Poffo just passed as well. Wrestling isn't for longevity. You know, a lot of these guys did not see their 70s, 80s, 90s. Some of these guys did not see their 50s and 60s. So, yeah, Lanny used to say, I saw the world, you know, and promoters paid for it all. And there's that aspect of it. And they met interesting, eclectic people around the world, and they wined and dined with kings and queens and celebs, and it wasn't all, you know, pain and pills and being on endless highways, but it was the best way I could explain it, which is a summation of how they explained it, is as difficult and brutal as it was, some of them would do it all over again, because it certainly wasn't 9 to 5 in an office. It was an interesting lifestyle, to say the least.
We had the pleasure of having Lanny on about a month before his passing. He was so proud of his brother. I don't think he gave himself enough credit for his abilities, because I tried to compliment him a couple times during the interview, and he would always deflect them and just go into talking about his brother. And I think he did a lot of innovative things with high flying.
Lanny was an early high flyer. He was a gymnast in school. Lanny was a dear friend of mine. He would sleep on my couch when he was in town, and I loved the guy, and I was just heartbroken. You know, he passed basically 3 or so weeks ago, and Lanny headlined Madison Square Garden and the entire then WWF circuit as the Genius. He wrestled Hulk Hogan on NBC's main event in front of millions upon millions of people, you know,
and he
network
won it.
TV.
Yeah, he won that match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he won the match, absolutely. So Lanny had his own distinguished career, but you know, Randy Savage was a bigger name, and I guess you would say a greater talent, but Lanny in his own right was no slouch, and there was no sibling rivalry. I mean, I knew Lanny well, and he loved his brother. His father broke the world sit-up record at one point. He did over 3,000 sit-ups, and he was in Believe It or Not. He always boasted, when I say boasted, in a positive way, about his dad, and how his mom, you know, kept the family afloat when they were all on the road, and how hard it was on her. And yeah, he was a real family guy, and proud of his entire family. And he saved his money. He lived well. He had moved to Ecuador and had a nice lifestyle. And unfortunately, he went to see Wicked on Broadway on a Wednesday night, and he's outside the theater, big smile on his face. Thursday morning, died in his sleep. They found him in bed Thursday morning. And 68 years old and a health nut. This isn't, you know, some guy that was, even during his wrestling days, he wasn't a hard partying guy. He would go back to the hotel room, and he liked to save his money, and basically, you know, but let me just say this: what is the toll again of being on the road hundreds and hundreds of days a year, different time zones? You know, you can't eat till 2 a.m. or whatnot. You know, it's not a healthy lifestyle. Nikolai Volkov is a dear friend of mine. He's also in 350 days, and Nikolai was a health nut. You know, the guy would carry seeds and raisins, and just like Lanny, and Nikolai died at 71. So Nikolai had heart issues at the end, and he called me from his hospital bed, and he says, "I'm feeling better. I'm going home." And he also was found dead in his bed by his wife. So let me just say this: somebody like Nikolai went so far back, like Lanny, to the 60s and 70s, early 70s, that they wrestled in smoke-filled arenas. You know, how healthy could that be? You know, you're in the middle of the ring, everybody's smoking, there's clouds of smoke enveloping the arena, and, you know, there you are breathing it in. There's a lot of variables why most of these guys do not live to a ripe old age, and living on the road is a major, major part of it. And also, one other thing, not that I'm a doctor, but, you know, Nikolai was carrying 340 pounds at his peak, and Lanny at one point was 272. I mean, this isn't great on the human heart either when you're carrying large amounts of weight. So, yeah, it's, you know, appreciate these guys while they're here, because like I said before, if you look at the cast for 350 days, I could rattle off, just off the top of my head, many, many, many guys in that cast are gone. Paul Orndorff, George Steele, Jimmy Snuka, Larry Sharp, the Wolfman, Don Fargo, etc., so on. Nikolai, like I said, Lanny, of course. I mean, it's, King Kong Mosca, Angelo Mosca. I mean, these guys are all in the film, and they're all gone now. So, which is sad, because, you know, these guys work real hard not to live to a ripe old age. You know, it's poignant. You know, these guys sacrificed their bodies to entertain us. A lot of these guys, you know, lived in constant pain. I've had wrestlers say to me, Evan, I'm always in pain. You know, they hate the word fake, because gravity isn't fake. The injuries aren't fake. The hip replacement, the knee replacement wasn't fake, and the divorces weren't fake. So that's like a taboo. Don't throw the fake word at them.
Exactly.
They don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, to them that's basically a swear word, because, yeah, I mean, just all the things that they have to go through in their professional and personal lives to do what they love, to chase their dream. I mean, it's kind of like Garth Brooks's Rodeo. I'm sure there should be a professional wrestling version of that song, about how they're chasing the buckle or chasing the belt and chasing their dream of representing their family in the ring.
Oh, yeah. Wrestlers have an expression, there's only so many bumps on your bump card. In other words, at some point, a body part's going to give out on you, because you're throwing a huge guy through the air, and he's landing night after night after night, time after time after time. And at some point, the human body gives out. And, yeah, I mean, it's a brutal, brutal business. And this movie shows the good, bad, and ugly of it.
Did you wrestle?
No, I do not wrestle. I've done heel managing. I've done commentating. Senior editor for Pro Wrestling Stories, which chronicles its history. But anytime I've gotten in a ring on an indie show, I'll go right up to the promoter. I don't take bumps. I'm not trained, you know, because I'm 6'2", 220. So sometimes they think I'm a wrestler, but I'm not. So plus I'm not a kid anymore. So you know, I knew better, because I'll tell you honestly, this isn't referring to the movie. This is referring to wrestling in general. When you see your heroes like Lou Albano, Harley Race, even Abdullah the Butcher, in wheelchairs at the end, Iron Sheik in wheelchairs, these guys were fierce, you know, giants, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. People don't realize. Lou Albano and Iron Sheik, one time we were at the airport together. We were doing autograph signings, and, you know, they're both in wheelchairs. And, you know, it just breaks your heart, because these were wild men. I mean, these guys headlined arenas around the world, and there they are, and it catches up to you. It really does. And tough business. I mean, not to be repetitive, but It is not an easy gig.
Definitely. I mean, same thing with Andre the Giant at the end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I saw Andre, and I'm going to show my age now. I saw Andre at Madison Square Garden in 1974, wrestling Killer Kowalski, like a battle of the giants, and he was young and thin and in shape and fast. That was 1974. 10 years later, approximately 10 years later, he's in the ring with Hogan at WrestleMania, and like a shell of himself. That business will take a toll on you. So it was not the same guy 10 years later.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the Butcher of Vashon, we've had him on several times, and he has told us some really great stories about Andre and just his experiences with him. I
saw Butcher Vashon wrestle Andre, 1974, Nassau Coliseum. And I saw Butcher Vashon wrestle Bruno. He's in 350 Days as well. He's in his late 80s, and he's healthy, and he's slimmed down, and he's one of the oldest living wrestlers, sharp as could be. A wonderful guy, Butcher Vashon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He loves giving back and playing Santa Claus. Him and Dee were telling me about that for the holidays. Unfortunately, he was bummed out the last couple of years with COVID and wasn't able to do it in person, but was even doing it virtually, was doing Santa Claus.
Yeah, this guy, he'll tell you stories for hours. One day when you have a lot of airtime, bring on Butcher Vashon. He wrestled in India in front of 100,000 people.
Oh, wow.
100,000 people. Yeah. People, Butcher Vashon goes back so far to the 50s and 60s. Butcher Vashon and Mad Dog Vashon, they were one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And Butcher Vashon was a top contender solo also with Vern Gagne in the AWA and Bruno in the WWF. He was a huge name. What happens with wrestling is sometimes these guys stick around too long and they kind of like slide down the card, and younger fans don't even realize what big stars they were prior. But yes, Butcher Vashon wrestled the Great Gama in India in front of 100,000 people. He said it was wild. Like, he couldn't believe it. Talk about like rock stars, 100,000 people. Yep.
You have a nice mix of generations in this movie or documentary. You have his son-in-law in there, Gangrel.
Yeah, that is a huge difference in generations and persona. Yeah, Gangrel's an interesting guy, colorful guy. Yeah, Darren Antola, David Wilkins, Fulvio Cesare, the producers, and Fulvio was the director. They were 80s wrestling fans. They loved Snooker and Orndorff and Piper. And, they were from that Hulkamania era 80s, but they were smart enough to know, get some of the older guys also, get some of the younger guys also, so it has a broader appeal. And what's happened over the years, which is actually a positive, is today the WWE guys will do about 200 days a year. They're not going to do that 300, 325, 350 because it's just too much of a toll. And these guys are getting paid well. And the promoters want to keep them healthy. So they don't have that, as grueling a schedule. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not as bad as it was at one point. And a guy like Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar are basically part-timers. Roman Reigns only wrestled a little over 50 times last year. That comes out to like once a week. So, actual in-ring performances, it came out and did promos on TV and stuff like that, but it doesn't have that same toll on the body that being out there, endlessly. Back in the day, I don't know if people are aware of this, you would have like Bob Backlund and Greg Valentine, or Bob Backlund and Morocco. They would wrestle 2 1-hour Broadways, 1-hour draws the same day. They do like a matinee in Philly and an evening show at the Garden or whatever the case may be. Imagine wrestling 2 1-hour matches, traveling before and after, to get to the next place, no less. These guys were like Supermen. People have no idea. And unfortunately, as the movie shows, sometimes it was the pills and the cocaine and everything that kept some of these guys going. There's a scene in the movie where Greg Valentine actually says, "I'm going down the road with Roddy Piper in the car doing 8 balls of cocaine. Like, this is natural, this is crazy, man." So
yeah, that's the best part. Like you said, it's just how he says it, like nonchalantly, like, yeah, it was just a Tuesday, no worries. We were high on coke. It's normal.
Driving.
Yeah, driving. Yeah. Yeah, we worry about people being drunk driving. Yeah, these guys are on 8 balls. Wow.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, Greg's still out there. He's in his 70s now, and he doesn't wrestle much. He does a lot more autograph signings and such. But that guy's walking history. He's in the movie, and his father was Johnny Valentine, and he didn't want to live off of his father's name, so he came in as John or Johnny Fargo, and he was supposed to be Don Fargo's brother. So the Fargos were big in the 70s, and Don Fargo's in the movie. He's gone now. He was a wild man. This was like a hard-partying, brawling guy. Like, have a match, go to the bar afterwards, brawl with the fans because he was heel, So Valentine learned that crazy, life on the road from Don Fargo, and Greg's dad, Johnny, he went down in a plane, and he was crippled. His career ended very abruptly. His father was one of the all-time greats. So again, Ric Flair had 2 plane crashes. 2. This is how insane this lifestyle is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is amazing. That because when you said plane crash, that is always the first thing that comes to mind is Ric Flair walked away from 2 of those and got better because he was crazy buff before the first one, and then he lost weight, and that made him an icon. It's just insane.
He did break his back though in one of those plane crashes. Yeah, man. It's interesting. So they would take these little tiny planes, and they call them puddle jumpers, some of them, and they would go from, like, let's say Philly to New York or whatnot. And sometimes it's not the safest thing in the world. And wrestlers like Bobby Shane have been killed in plane crashes, and some of these guys, like I said, permanently injured. And it's the law of averages. You're on thousands and thousands of flights, and one goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, gosh, there was just so much to cover with 350 days, which I'm glad I'm now saying it correctly because I say it 350 days.
It's fine. It's fine.
I forgot the 100. It makes it sound so much better, though. But yeah, shoot, we're just so excited about that. And then, of course, we got to touch on your experience with the movie The Wrestler, which kind of ended up turning into a real life thing. We've talked to the cat, Ernest Miller, before, and just a really great speaker as well.
Yes, I was acting as an agent and taking many of the legends, for autograph signings and personal appearances. And I'm sitting one day with Johnny Valiant and Nikolai, both gone now, dear friends. And Scott Franklin, the executive producer of The Wrestler, which is the money guy, which is the guy who generates the deals and the funding for the movie, his best friend shows up and he says, "You guys would be perfect for this movie, Darren Aronofsky." And I knew Aronofsky because I'm a film buff. I knew Pie and Requiem for a Dream, his early films, and we exchanged cards. And I didn't really think much of it because you do so many appearances and you meet so many people. And but some 6 months or whatever go by, and next thing you know, I get a call. "Would you like to meet Darren Aronofsky and Scott Franklin and the screenwriter and whoever else?" And Evan, you bring whoever you think is appropriate, and we'll all just talk. So I bring Johnny and Nikolai's manager, Nikita Brezhnikov, his real life manager, and Tiger Khan, who's also gone now. They're all gone except for Nikita, and we're just Johnny Valiant used to do stand up, and Nikolai's a funny, charming guy. He does magic tricks, and we just hit it off. Everybody hit it off. It was like old friends, you know. And next thing I know, I'm offered, would you like to be the associate producer? Basically, the wrestling guy. Not the money guy, the wrestling guy. So I did all the casting calls for the wrestlers. I brought in Mickey's trainer, his stunt double, the ring, you know, et cetera, so on. And I'll tell you a quick story that was really wild. So I'm on set one day, and they're filming that really depressing autograph scene at that convention. There's like nobody there, and the wrestlers all look down and out. And Aronofsky says to me, Evan, come here for a second. He has like a smirk. I go, yeah. He goes, I want you to walk around, walk up to Mickey last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid. like all of a sudden I'm acting. I've never acted in my life, you know? Mm-hmm. So Mickey Rourke whispers in my ear and he goes, just improv it. You know, like you know, I'm not, you know, a trained actor. So I did exactly what Aronofsky said, and there's like 150 people on set and these giant cameras, and I walk up to Mickey and I'm thinking like, what am I going to say to this guy? Because we're improvising it. So I go, I used to see you at the Garden, Madison Square Garden. Can I have your autograph? And he looks at me and he goes, what's your name? And I think for a second and I go, Evan. like how surreal this is. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. How utterly surreal this is.
Nice.
Okay, so jump ahead, Bret. We're at the New York Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. A year or so later, the film is in the can and sold out, 2,300 people, $40 a ticket. And I'm in the audience with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, and the scene comes on, and I don't know if I made it past the cutting room or not. I'm watching it like anybody else. And all of a sudden, I'm on the screen. She's looking at me. She's looking at the screen. She goes, that's you. That's you. You know, how bizarre this is. And I'm looking around during the scene where Mickey says to his daughter, Randy Aram, I should say, the character says to his daughter, I'm just a broken down piece of meat. And everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. And I just said to myself, we've worked on this for 7 years from start to finish, from the first meeting to, you know, funding and multiple rewrites of the script, which I helped with, you know, et cetera, so on. And all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're going, this works. And it was a great night. It was really powerful, you know, and it was a standing ovation at the end. It was really the equivalent of right now, Brendan Fraser and Darren Aronofsky's The Whale came back from pretty much obscurity, mm-hmm. and he may very well walk away with the Oscar on, you know, at the Academy Awards coming up. So Mickey won Best Actor at the Golden Globes, was nominated for the Best Actor at the Academy Awards, but lost to Sean Penn. So that was quite a comeback for Mickey, and ditto Brendan Fraser. So Aronofsky, I was sitting with Aronofsky one day, and he says to me, you know, we can't get the funding we want, because Mickey at the time wasn't a huge name anymore. You know, he was looking for 18 million. We got 6 million, and 6 million is nothing. That's like catering on the Avengers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he says he was considering Nicolas Cage at one point, because in 2007, 2008, he was still a huge star, Nicolas Cage. We even met with him one night, and Aronofsky says to me, he looks at me like, really? Like, he goes, Mickey's the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey's the right guy. You know, forget the money, you know, because Darren's an artist. You know, he's an artist. He wanted to make the right movie. We were on the road every weekend. I was taking him to conventions. I was taking him to indie shows. We were sitting in dressing rooms, picking King Kong Bundy's brain, etc. I took him to CZW Cage of Death, which is utterly insane. We go backstage. It was like a MASH unit. It was people covered in blood, getting stitched up. So Darren, in 6 or so months, really saw what the wrestling world was about, and he was also like a big mid-'80s Hulkamania era fan, and that's what he knew. So one day I took him to a convention, and there's Moolah and Mae Young and Snooker and Albano and Nikolai and Iron Sheik and etc. so on. There's nobody there. There's nobody there. And Aronofsky kept saying to me, because he's a good-hearted guy. His mom's a school teacher. He's not some spoiled rich kid. He's a regular guy, you know? So Darren says to me, Evan, where is everybody? Like, he felt bad for them. Iron Sheik's head was down on the table sleeping. We recreated that convention in the convention scene in that movie. Johnny Valiant's head was down sleeping in that sad autograph scene in The Wrestler. So, you know, Darren wanted everything to ring true. Jim Cornette wasn't thrilled with The Wrestler. We don't all live, you know, we're not all poverty-stricken. And yes, I understand that. But all of Darren's films skew a dark. If you look at any of his films, they're dark, you know. That's just him. You know, what appeals to him. So,
definitely.
We were very proud of The Wrestler.
An amazing movie, and I agree with you, you know, that his movies do skew that way. And then I also agree with you when you said Jim Cornette wasn't happy with, you could have ended your sentence there, because he just isn't happy with much. We've had him on the show before as well, and yeah, he definitely does. It's funny because he was complaining about the movie skewing dark. He seems to skew to the dark or the negative side of almost any topic.
Well, Jim Cornette goes back to his teens being involved with Memphis wrestling.
Yeah, being a photographer.
And And I'm an old school fan, but I love Kenny Omega against Okada. Just the other night, MJF and Bryan Danielson. That was amazing. So I'm not one of these guys, there's been no good wrestling, you know, since the territories. I just don't feel that way. I'm not a huge WWE fan, but Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn was great. That was great. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, you call it as you see it. I mean, Cornette will go, you know, AWA is a mud show or whatever his terminology is. And there's flaws with, AEW. There's flaws with AEW. But when you see something like MJF and Bryan Danielson go over an hour, that was wrestling elevated to art. Okada and Omega, Kenny Omega, for New Japan was wrestling elevated to art. You can't just dismiss it all. Oh, they're just spot monkeys. Oh, you know, it's like, call it down the middle. I mean, the stuff in WWE, I absolutely loathe in this. But when you have a match like Reigns and Sami Zayn, you can't, you know, you got to give it credit where it's due. So, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of things in pro wrestling. So I do understand Cornette. I don't always agree with him, to be honest. But I respect his accomplishments. To this day, I tell people the Midnight Express was the greatest tag team of all time with Cornette. I used to go see them with the Rock and Roll Express in Philly in the NWA in the 80s. Those guys were great every night of the week. Every night of the week.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know.
So,
I agree with you. I mean, shoot, I'm Kentucky strong, so I am very proud the fact that he is also a Kentuckian and just what he's contributed to the sport of wrestling. But just sometimes.
Speaking of Kentucky, since we're talking wrestling, another friend who suddenly passed away, J.J. Maguire. J.J. Maguire, who did the music for many, many, many of the WWE and WCW guys with Jimmy Hart. That was Jimmy Hart's musical partner. He went to sleep one night last year and didn't wake up. Another one. So this guy was a very, very he was from Kentucky. Yep. J.J. Maguire. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely Kentucky, and then shoot, our area is Cincinnati and Columbus, and we've had a lot of great wrestlers from there. Obviously, shoot, you got Pillman and his son, Ambrose, Al Snow. I mean, just a lot of great folks that contribute to the sport.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love professional wrestling, and I hate professional wrestling for what it's done to some of my dear friends. And whether it's the wrestler or 350 days, you're going to see both sides of it. And I also have a documentary called Wrestling Then and Now, which you could see on Tubi, which was basically done on pennies. Killer Kowalski, Nikolai, Don Dr. Death Arnold, Homicide. You know, we shot it on pennies some 20 years ago, and we just put it on Tubi. And it also shows the good, bad, and ugly of pro wrestling. So I've met some of the most wonderful, eclectic people I'm proud to call friends, like Nikolai, like Lanny. And there are promoters and other people I wouldn't spit on if they were on fire. That's pro wrestling in 10 words or less. I mean, it's taken me to places I never would have imagined, including working with a genius like Aronofsky. And it's also, there have been nights where you're with a legend like Johnny Valiant or Jimmy Valiant or Nikolai or whomever, and you're fighting to get your money that's owed to them from some low-life indie promoter, you know, and you're standing your ground. Like, you know, I'm like the enforcer. You know, give me the money that you promised them. You know, these are legends. You do not treat them like this. They do the standard, oh, the house was a little light. And I'm like, every seat was filled. Give me the money that you promised you were going to pay them, which is not an astronomical sum of money for an older athlete to get on a plane, train, bus or endless car ride to get this payday. You know, that's wrestling also. And it's the ugly part of it that, you know, I do not appreciate. And it never changes and it never will. And the young indie guys, basically, it's pay as you will. It's like, maybe he'll give me something. Maybe he'll give me gas money. Maybe it's a hot dog and a handshake. It's, you know, there's a real ugly exploitative side to this business too.
Exactly. Well, it sounds like 350 Days is a must watch. Where's the best place to watch it?
Amazon Prime, Tubi. It's on many, many, many different platforms. Just Google it. It's easy to find. Worldwide distribution. The distributors, Gravitas, they got us all over the world. You know, many, many different platforms. But I would start with Amazon Prime and Tubi. And Tubi's free. So, but Tubi will have commercials in it. So, whatever works for the viewers. I'm sure the beauty of this film is like The Wrestler. You don't even have to be an avid wrestling fan. It's human interest. like you said, it's no different than a rock star being on the road or, any kind of performer. You're in a different hotel room every night, and sometimes they find your body in that hotel room the next morning.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the behind the music documentaries.
Oh yeah. I have a book coming out called Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, and it tells the story. It's 100 stories about my life with these guys being on the road, and some of it is very, very poignant. When Nikolai Volkov died, Bret Hart said publicly, Nikolai was the nicest wrestler I ever met. Imagine how many thousands and thousands of wrestlers. His family was wrestling, the Hart family. And Bret Hart said Nikolai was the nicest person I ever met. Nikolai called me when my mother died. You know, what this means to you when one of your heroes is there for you at your darkest moments, and that book is going to chronicle this world also, and the making of the wrestler, a lot of things that, haven't been, discussed prior. A lot of interesting things in making a movie. It was, like I said, it was a 7-year project, and 350 days was 6 years. 6 years. People think, they see WWE pumping out content, and they think, you just snap your fingers and you have another movie. But if you want to do something right, it's a team, and it's years and years, thousands of hours of editing. Our editor, I'll leave you with this, 350 days, Michael Burlingame, our editor, he worked with Paul McCartney, Sting from the Police, not Sting from the rafters in WCW. Okay, Mariah Carey. This is a world-class editor. And he took 80 or 90 hours of footage and honed it into an hour 50. People have no idea what goes into making a movie. It's a project, boy. If you do it right, it's a project. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Evan, it has been a pleasure having you on the show today.
My pleasure. Anytime. I enjoy talking to you, and we appreciate your support.
Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival is back at historic Crew Stadium in Columbus, Ohio, with the Foo Fighters, Tool, Avenged Sevenfold, Kiss, plus Rob Zombie, Deftones, Queens of the Stone Age, Godsmack, and more. Memorial Day weekend. Passes are on sale now at SonicTempleFestival.com for only $10 down.
Our guest today is Jeff Walkman. He is a nightlife entrepreneur, an author, an innovator in performing arts, digital marketing, business development. I was going to say, it seems like you do a little bit of everything, Jeff. Is that the case?
That is the case. Online marketing is definitely a strong point for me. I have ownership in several companies. The only way I get involved in the company is if I own a piece of it, then I start taking over the marketing. And that's where a lot of the success from some of the companies come from. Some were already successful when I got in. I just assisted in making them more successful.
Nice. Yeah, shoot, you have Hunkamania and Red Velvet Burlesque Entertainment. I mean, two
Correct.
Great franchises.
Yeah, so we actually also own the largest drag queen show in the world, which operates in 37 cities weekly across the country, just like the Burlesque show and the Male Review. And we're opening in 2 different countries this month and next month. We're opening in London, England, and Montreal, Canada.
Oh, wow. So it seems like despite already being extremely busy, you're even more busy now.
Yeah. I never use time, not having time as an excuse. I just sleep less.
So what does a nightlife entrepreneur do?
So being in this business for the last 13 years and being with a company that's been operable for 27 years, I feel like we've pioneered and innovated. And the way why I say that is because we've actually been the only brand that was able to produce and develop shows weekly in over 37 cities across the country. As a matter of fact, there's no company that has shows in more than maybe 2 or 3 cities across the country. And so as a nightlife entrepreneur, our company just keeps on growing and evolving in other avenues. At first, we started with just the male review, eventually tapping into the drag queen show market, which was amazing, and now the burlesque market. And in doing so, it's not just about being the biggest brand in the country or the world or even the money that it brings in. It's, we're bringing jobs to people in the masses in each industry. And I feel very proud of that. And we also make sure we put smiles on the faces of thousands of customers a week, which is also an amazing point of view to look at it as. We're personally involved in making memories for thousands of people, worldwide weekly, which is amazing.
That is amazing. I was going to say, getting people jobs, getting people entertainment. Sounds like you guys do a lot of great stuff. What are some of the contributions beside those two that you have made to the performing arts?
So in each industry, the stability factor, I believe, was not really there. And that is something that brings a great value to each individual industry for the performers and for the nightlife industry itself. As you know, COVID devastated everybody in almost every aspect of business outside of medical fields, And so I feel like the stability that we brought about at the early time frames of these shows really brought a tremendous value financially to everyone that's involved.
So tell us a little bit more about Red Velvet Burlesque.
So the Red Velvet Burlesque show was birthed in New York in November of last year. And for a company of our size, with the data that we possess, having sold tickets to thousands of people yearly for the last 27 years, it was almost a no-brainer for us to get ourselves involved in that market because we're already in the show business aspect of that kind of entertainment. And because of the data that we possess, plus our marketing capabilities, seconds to none in the industries that we're in. And so having gotten the show off the ground in New York City and being very successful quickly, we decided to take it nationally like we did the rest of our shows. And within 1 year had almost 30 cities open and running weekly, which basically brought stability to that industry and jobs again in the masses to people around the country.
Well, it sounds exciting. The important question is, do you have shows in Ohio and Kentucky?
Yeah, so Kentucky, in Ohio, we already have the drag show and the male review. The burlesque show is opening literally probably next week. And then Kentucky is the next city on the list, which should be open within the next couple of weeks. So the Midwest is really an area that we're definitely developing right now. And some cities already open, like Indianapolis has been open for a year. Columbus has been open for almost a year. So we're getting there. Chicago has been open for over 10 years.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, there's a lot of great places in the Midwest to see your art.
Yes, definitely.
So what is the difference between the art of burlesque and other forms of erotic entertainment?
So the art of burlesque, I really do love the fact that we're not just a traditional burlesque show. We're a burlesque and variety show. And we bring something very unique to the industry. And so there are a lot of sexy entertainers that do a lot of very sexy acts, but I can tell you personally the difference. I've been to female strip clubs before and love the art of what they do, of course. So that's amazing. But when you come to a burlesque show, you see the emotion in the dancing that they're doing. And I remember clearly, this one really stuck in my head. I was at my show in Nashville, and one of the entertainers, which all of the entertainers, they're phenomenal, but there was one particular entertainer who was doing a traditional burlesque style act. And I almost felt the emotion, it almost made me want to cry, but in a good way, not a bad way, that's how much I felt the connection to the emotion in her dancing. And so it's very sexy, yes, but there's a lot of emotion in it, and that's something I think is unique and different.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, you're right. Usually with other forms, you don't really feel the emotion. It's more just intense eroticism, but it sounds like there's a lot more to burlesque than the other forms.
Well, so a lot of the dancers do things that are different, and some of them are very sexual and erotic. You know, sometimes depending on what city you go to or what night you might go there, you'll find a male dancer that does something very 50 Shades of Grey-ish, and it's erotic. But the burlesque side of things, I think a great burlesque performer will have you feeling it, not just seeing it.
So where did you learn about your digital marketing and business development?
So from the start of my career in that aspect of the business, Armand Perry has been hands down the number one most instrumental impact in my life when it comes to learning about that. And through the years of him teaching me and me learning the ever evolving ways, I've created what I deem to be probably I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I've met so many people that have promised so many things that I probably think that I'm one of the best I've ever seen yet, next to him.
Nice. And then tell us about your humble beginnings.
I come from a family of 8. We lived in a 1.5 bedroom apartment when I was growing up, which obviously sounds tight, but you cannot imagine. I would have to find which bed I could sleep in that night, you know? And I know what it feels like to go to bed hungry. And when I was a kid, I used to feel bad about that for my parents, and I never would say anything. So I literally would go to bed hungry and just keep my mouth shut about it. And so when I say I know what it feels like to be hungry and I stay hungry, and I mean that now to this day, you know, metaphorically, obviously, it's because of my humble beginnings and what I've gone through. And, you know, I've gone through a lot of my life to get to where I am today. And I believe that my past does have a lot to do with how savvy I am as a businessman now. So I don't regret anything. You can't change the past, so why regret it, you know? But I do come from a very, very humble beginning. Wow.
So it sounds like you've, stayed humble, but stayed hardworking. And with that, obviously, nowadays you could probably go to any nice restaurant that you want and have experienced some of the best in the world. So that must be an interesting change.
Yeah, so you are correct. I do stay as humble as I possibly can. It's just in my nature to be, especially where I come from. I don't let money change me or success change me or notoriety change me. And yeah, you're right. I could probably eat anywhere I want to, yet you'll catch me at McDonald's every once in a while too, you know?
So tell us about your most recent book.
So right now I'm in the process of writing my second book. The first book that I wrote was basically up until the point where I came out of prison. And so the book that I'm writing now, and this was like 13 years ago or something like that, 14 years ago, I think. And so the book that I'm writing now is a very different story. You know, the first story was about how I grew up, how I got to become the person that I was, what landed me in prison, the trials and tribulations, you know, from that early childhood age until that point where I came out with just a promise to change my life. And so when that book ended, no one would know what would really come next. And so that promise to change my life was something that I kept. And now I will tell the story of the last 13 years.
So what are some of the other things that listeners can do to further develop their sales acumen?
So the one thing that I can say is things change. They change daily, they change weekly, they change yearly, they change, you know, every decade as far as marketing goes, you know, and you have to stay with the times. You have to be on top of that. A lot of local businesses fail because they fail to change, I think, and that's sad because a lot of those, you know, mom and pop type of operations are things that I always loved, you know, going to a local restaurant or a convenience store, but you see 7-Eleven everywhere while all these convenience stores are closing. And it's because people don't want to change with the times. And you can't be afraid to change. As a matter of fact, you have to. And working as hard as physically possible is obviously a given, but I don't think people understand what that means. And that's something that has to happen. So I could say, get with the times, stay with the times, and work as hard as you can, and you'll be successful.
Nice. And then going into your other establishment, Hunkamania, tell us a little bit more about it.
Hunkamania is the largest male review show in the world, operating in almost 40 cities weekly in the U.S. 2 cities outside of the U.S. are to be open this month and next month. And we're the ultimate girls' night out experience as far as it goes for male review. It's actually an amazing show. They do choreographed numbers, some solo routines. You know, we do have, obviously, we like to keep tradition. So you will see the cop and the firefighter and the cowboy, but then you have some new age acts that you'll come and you'll enjoy as well.
Nice. So for people that say liked the recent movie, would this be a similar experience to that?
So I would say that it's a good mix of traditional and new. And what that movie was really more so new and theatrical. They bring a more theatrical aspect to it, almost like a Broadway show, obviously a little more erotic. And so we have a mixture of the both.
And then just like before, do you have locations in Ohio and Kentucky?
Yeah. So Ohio, we have a weekly show in Columbus, and we do have a show in Kentucky that's opening up the first of this following month.
Nice. So a lot of great stuff, a lot of great things for our listeners to check out. And then, did you ever perform at Hunkamania?
So I never performed, and people always think that I started out as a dancer. They always do, but I've actually never performed at Hunkamania.
Okay.
Not that I'd be opposed, and I think one day it's going to wind up happening, but not by choice, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, shoot, when Googled you, I was like, wow, this guy is in one heck of in great shape. So I wouldn't have been surprised. Yeah.
Thank you. At 42 years old, I accept that compliment greatly.
And then another one I saw on the list of your performers, there was a performer named Rudy. Is that by chance?
Yeah, so Rudy is actually a international published model, and actually a good friend of ours, as well as a performer at Hunkamania. Yes.
So that is Rudy Bondini?
That is, yes, it is.
Oh, awesome. We had him on the show a while back. Great guy. We enjoyed speaking with him. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes sense because, when we had him on and we were talking about his modeling career, that would make sense that the ladies would definitely line up to see him perform.
Oh, yeah. Very accomplished gentleman in his field. Hats off to Rudy.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's a lot of great things going on with you. Where on social media, where on the web, where can our listeners find out about your different establishments and you?
So me, you can just at Jeffrey WACHMAN, that's JEFFREYWACHMAN on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Also jeffreywalkman.com if you want to check out my book or any of my social media handles or some press about me. And as far as the shows go, it's the Red Velvet Burlesque Show. That's at redvelvetburlesqueshow.com. Hunkomania, that's hunk, HUNKO, mania.com. And the Diva Royale Show, which is the best celebrity impersonation drag queen show in the world. You can find us at dragqueenshow.com.
Awesome. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much.
The Dreamhouse Nation loves it when we give out our email address, and that is dreamhousenation@gmail.com. That's dreamhousenation@gmail.com. Right in to win tickets. We are giving away some of the best tickets of the summer. We're giving away tickets to the Sonic Temple in Columbus, Ohio, May 25th through May 28th. Tool, Godsmack, Avenged Sevenfolds, Queens of the Stone Age, Kiss, Rob Zombie, Foo Fighters, the Deftones. It is going to be an amazing event. Right into dreamhousenation@gmail.com to be eligible to win tickets to this huge event. So definitely don't miss out. Sonic Temple, May 25th through the 28th, Columbus, Ohio, historic Crew Stadium. Right in. Enjoy.